I promise you that Donald Trump knows that the primary role of the president is to keep us safe.
And the man we just saw will get the chance to help Mr. Trump keep us safe, General Michael Flynn, who on January 20th will become National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. This is America Talks Live Hour 2, where our most important program content comes from you. Your questions, comments, and observations phoned into us at 1-877-639-7629. That's 1-877-NEWSMAX. General Flynn, just one of 3 who agreed to join President-elect Trump in the next administration. Miranda Kahn gives us those other names and has much more in this news update. Miranda?
Yeah, thanks, JD. As you just said, former General Michael Flynn will be Donald Trump's national security advisor. Trump also picks Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions for Attorney General and Kansas Congressman Mike Pompeo to run the CIA. Sessions served as Alabama's Attorney General from 1995 to 1997 before being elected to the Senate. And Trump praised new CIA Director Pompeo, saying that he's an unrelenting leader for our intelligence community to ensure the safety of Americans and our allies. Trump is expected to meet with the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg very soon. The president-elect questioned during the campaign whether the U.S. should continue protecting NATO allies who have low defense spending. But before Trump takes office, he still has to resolve that case against Trump University. CNBC reports Trump is close to settling the lawsuits against his university in New York and California. Former students claim they were scammed out of thousands of dollars. For much more on these stories, please visit Newsmax.com. I'm Miranda Kahn. Back to you, JD.
Thanks very much, Miranda. As we just mentioned, General Michael Flynn is Donald Trump's pick for National Security Advisor. That is a White House staff position that does not require Senate confirmation, but that's not stopping opponents from voicing their concerns about Flynn's appointment. Ed Berliner joins me right here on the anchor desk to review the pros and cons about the selection of a very modern Major General.
There's a lot of when you come down to the pros and cons. Let's go ahead first and look at the pros about General Michael Flynn. I'll do it over here. Don't sweat. The pros, first of all, are very simple. Because he's been in the military for 33 years. He was the top intelligence officer at the Joint Special Ops Command. He knows what it takes to get intelligence into the right hands because he also sought to increase the number of human spies. JD, we've talked about this with a lot of people that we know in foreign policy. America has been very down in the last decade or so in getting real human elements on the ground to get the intelligence. He shakes up the bureaucracy, he speaks his mind, and he absolutely will fight against Islamic terror. He is not afraid to use the words. That's the good. Here come the cons about Michael Flynn, which quite frankly are very disturbing to a number of people, and it starts right up front with a deal that he has his company with the Turkish government. His consulting firm is still technically under contract with the Turkish government, and he has received millions lobbying for them. And we all know that there's been a lot about lobbyists the last couple of days. He called Huma Abedin a radical Muslim thinker, which was debunked in the press immediately. He has appeared as a paid analyst on RT television. That's Russian state, Russian-controlled backed television. He is viewed by many as being very soft on Vladimir Putin, and he would favor lifting the EU sanctions, which some people in the EU are concerned about, others are not. Also in February, he tweeted, "The fear of Muslims is rational." Has a lot of people very concerned about what he says about Muslims here in America. JD, I think the biggest thing is his connection with the Russian government. There's people very afraid here because if you remember, even Donald Trump's own son said once, and I believe it was maybe 10 years ago at an economic conference where he said, "We get millions of dollars from the Russians into our company." That's got to be discussed. They have to find out if he still has connections with the Russians. The Turkish government still is a big concern. He is going to have to divest himself of a lot of these things, but you and I both know when it comes down to becoming a member of a cabinet, you will always have people who have shadows in the closet somewhere that have got to be taken care of. Can he get through all this? Absolutely, I believe that he can. But he has got to convince a lot of people that he has severed these connections and he is completely involved in doing this as an observer and as making sure that Donald Trump gets the best intel.
Well, it is worth watching, but it's also worth noting that since he's a staff member, it's Trump's call The Senate has nothing to say.
Does not have to go through the Senate. Correct.
Nothing has to happen there. But we know the left is still incensed by the outcome of the election. They'll never be pleased. The question is, will it please the bulk of the American people as President Trump takes the oath of office January 20th? We'll continue to follow that, Ed, and we appreciate your contribution here on America Talks Live. So, with General Flynn getting that position, with the other two officials being named, one from the House and one from the Senate, we're pleased to call on our political panel. First, from Newsmax New York, attorney and political consultant Sam Nunberg, and via Skype from Washington, a guy who stays mighty busy as a man of letters, foreign policy columnist for National Review and domestic policy columnist for Opportunity Lives, Tom Rogan. Gentlemen, we thank you both for coming in. Sam Nunberg, first to you. General Flynn, was there ever really a mystery about this guy getting some gig in connection with national security in a Trump administration?
Absolutely not. He's been a trusted advisor to President-elect Trump, as we call him now, and he was there early on. Look, he was giving President-elect Trump briefings by around August 2015. He's been very supportive. He campaigned for him, and he really went outside the norms for a general, and you know, it actually paid election dividends. But let's also talk about his experience. He ran the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the Obama administration basically fired him because he did not like the way his intelligence was being processed by Clapper, and they were misinforming the public on ISIS. He truly understands the Islamist threat around this country, and I think he'll be a tremendous asset.
And you mentioned the threat of radical Islamists. The general joined us here on Newsmax TV back in June, and here was his take on the steps that we as a nation need to take against radical Islamic terrorists.
Radical Islam is an ideology that won't go away by simply crushing them on the battlefield. We must face the fact that we are up against an ism, if you will, like we were against Nazism or communism, and now this is radical Islamism, and we must face that. We must clearly define it. We must get the Muslim world, those moderates that do exist behind this.
So, Tom Rogan, let me turn to you. Having General Flynn as National Security Advisor, a good fit personally with President-elect Trump and a good fit on the issues?
I think it's definitely a good fit personally with President-elect Trump, but I don't think it's actually a good fit professionally. And I would use a few factors on that. Number one, General Flynn's relationship with Russia is very concerning, as your reporter noted. Very concerning to the degree that he knows RT, Russia, that outlet is a propaganda arm with links to Russian intelligence. But I think more broadly, General Flynn's actual reputation in some areas of the military, JSOC, for example, is not quite as good, to say the least, as it is presented to be. Some people he's worked with do not value him as a leader. That is a concern, and I think as we come into these critical issues that the next administration will be facing, you need someone who has the ability to, the role of the National Security Advisor is not just to advise the president, it is to coalesce and deal with the interagency process, the massive bureaucracy of American government as it relates to national security. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. I hope he is, but I don't know.
That is always the rap against generals. I believe it was Harry Truman who said of his successor, Dwight Eisenhower, he said, poor Ike, he'll sit here and say, do this, do that, and nothing will get done within a vast bureaucracy. Speaking of bureaucracies and those named to lead them, Sam, the word comes that a member of Congress, Kansas Representative Mike Pompeo, will take over now as CIA director. A transition official has told Reuters that Mike, in fact, accepts the offer. Pompeo may be from the heartland, but he's valued for his brains. Graduating at the top of his class at West Point, going on to Harvard Law School. I got to tell you, Sam, not only having been a representative in Congress, but with a resume, he is one impressive guy.
Yeah, and he also has a very good experience as a CEO of an aerospace company, I believe, and I'm sure he had to privately, during his private sector experience, deal with the CIA. Look, I mean, this is an appointment that has gotten recommendations or support on both sides of the aisle, actually. I just saw a Democrat came out in support of him, and he's a very trusted friend, excuse me, of Mike Pence. And I think that this is somebody that came out of left field, and it's actually very good. It's sort of like draining the swamp here and getting somebody that we need.
I appreciate the verbal
of...
allusion there. We better say he came out of right field, though. Some people might think left field is not where he is ideologically. Gentlemen, let's listen to Mike Pompeo when he joined us on Newsmax Prime in June, talking about what was going on politically within the GOP and with Donald Trump.
So we have got to rally around our nominee and successfully defeat Hillary Clinton come November. It's an imperative for the continuation of the Republic as we all know it.
Let me turn to Tom. Mike Pompeo.
Oh, JD, let me make...
Very quickly, because I want Tom to get in on it too. Go ahead, Sam.
I understand. I do like the fact that he was supportive of Marco Rubio in the primary, and President-elect Trump has now appointed him as a CIA director, which is a good sign for other appointments to come.
Yeah, well, we're hearing something about a team of rivals. Before we get to that topic, and we'll take that up in a couple of minutes, let me get your take, Tom Rogan. Mike Pompeo, a younger guy, a relative newcomer to Congress, but a guy with an impressive resume.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very good pick. I think he will win respect quite quickly from the staff at CIA. It is notable that people who've worked with him in the House Intelligence Committee are fans of his from both parties. I think that speaks to what you need at CIA, because CIA, again, is a collection agency that takes intelligence and then makes it into a product that informs policymakers. And to do that, you need a leader there who is willing to deal, willing to be challenged, willing to have different perspectives from across the organization. So I think he's a very good pick, and I would agree with what Sam said there, that the fact that President-elect Trump picked him, I think is a good sign. I think it's a positive thing. It's a very good pick, let's put it that way.
And Sam, of course, made mention of his early endorsement of Marco Rubio, as we heard in that audio clip from June. Like a good soldier seeing the battlefield, knowing where the momentum lay, he said it's time to get behind the nominee. That turned out to be Donald Trump, and now Trump names him as the nominee for director of the CIA. When we come back, we're going to talk about Mr. Trump's selection for Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, Alabama's junior senator who ended up in the Senate in kind of an interesting way. At one point, it appeared Jeff Sessions was going to be a federal judge. In lieu of becoming someone on the bench, he comes off the bench and into the action as America's top law enforcement official, pending his confirmation in the Senate. More of that in your phone calls at 1-877-NEWSMAX. Stay with us.